Figured I would do a short video review just on the assembly of this Chinese gas chainsaw that I got. It's pretty small, 25cc, only a 12-inch bar. You could probably put something larger, but doesn't have a lot of power to it. Now, I haven't actually fired it up yet, so that will be the next step. But I wanted to show this rather unusual design for the whole bar and chain assembly, and I was really questioning it as I started putting it together, but it actually has some neat concepts if they hold up, and that's going to be the real trick here, is what happens the first time this thing throws a chain and tears things up. The one thing that I do like, again, complicates things, but this is the brake handle, or the brake for the brake handle. And as I started to take it apart, I'm like, what the heck? Why do I have to disassemble this whole brake handle assembly? But you'll notice that it's just a floating pin here. So when you take this off, the entire brake handle assembly comes off with it, and you just have to be careful putting it back together to get that back in the slot. What that let them do is the brake is actually serving, and this is also the flywheel in here, or the basically the clutch. And so that has the chain captured between the clutch and brake assembly and the body. So usually what happens when you throw a chain is that you have to disassemble this whole thing because you can't, the chain has fallen off there and you can't really get it back in easily. This design, and what they've done is they've also sandwiched this between two pieces of metal, so that's kind of nice too. Although this is still plastic and the housing at the top is plastic. But if this throws a chain, it will stay on the pulley, so that when you come and you loosen it back up, you can get it back on the saw without actually having to completely disassemble this. You just have to loosen the bolts. And the other thing they did, which could fail early, could work very well, is the pin that actually tightens the bar. You can kind of see there the end, and I was looking for the screw hole and going, man, that's small. Why didn't they give me space to tighten it up? And you look and it's like, oh, this is the screw. And so what they have is a little gearbox assembly in here that screws this forwards, and as you tighten it up here, that tightens the chain. Now, the advantage there should be that while the chain will still get loose as it warms up, the tensioner hopefully will not back drive like it does typically on a saw. So between having these two, you've got two bolts to tighten. A lot of stuff these days is only coming with one. So you got two bolts to tighten everything down. So I do actually expect this tensioner to work pretty well. I am a little worried. If you notice, just looking down on the bar there, that's all kind of the sensitive plastic stuff that holds the brake handle. And so that's the only thing. When it throws the chain, if it comes up that direction, it may actually tear some stuff up that we don't want torn up. That's obviously designed as a wear part, essentially. It's a protector, but it's also something that'll get hit. So, just looking through the rest of this, got some adjustments on the carburetor. You've got your gas and oil. The one thing that's kind of unusual about this, they do give you this little mixer for your gas, although this is not what's pictured in the thing, so it's not quite as nice as the one that they actually have pictured in their manual. And surprisingly, the manual's pretty decent too. Readable pictures and English instructions. So I can't ding them too hard on the manual. Little toolkit, most of which you don't really need initially. This is the main tool. So you've got the the smaller bolt is actually what goes to hold the chain bar. And so that's that. And then the screwdriver for tightening it up. So one tool, that's good. Kind of cheesy here. This is the clutch mechanism, or not the clutch mechanism, the choke mechanism. Feels really weak. And under here should be our air filter. Decent amount of thread on it so that it shouldn't wobble off and lose your filter too quickly. Looks like it's a cleanable style of filter, so yeah, you've got a small piece of foam inside, you've got a external dust and debris filter in front of that. I'll put that back on when I can free up two hands. And pull handle, you know, decent number of illustrations and stuff. Not 100% sure, looking over here at the edge of the handle, what the purpose of the little piece of cloth tape there is. Strap, looks like, but anyway, so I want to fuel this puppy up and we'll see what happens. So I went ahead and used their little mixer shaker can, which did not survive the trip very well. If you notice some of the damage on the side of the can, but it also leaks like a sieve, so as far as something to shake it up, it's not very good. But what you see here, and this is what I started to say earlier, is that this requires a 25-to-1 mix, which is a pretty hefty oil mix compared to the 50 or 20, 50 or 40-to-1 that you would typically see on most two-stroke engines. But anyway, so you can see how much gas spilled trying to use that to fill this without a funnel. So I think the bottle that they show in the manual looks a lot better in terms of being able to use it to fill as well as something that'll seal. But that gives you an idea of how much the tank holds, and I've got that much left over that I'm going to have to be very careful because it's going to leak and eventually evaporate out. So I'm probably just going to dump this in with my other mix for my other saw and be done with it. Okay, so here's my first major flaw. I got it running, but had no power, could not move the chain hardly at all. I loosened the chain up a bunch and got it to spin a little bit, but I was getting smoke coming out of the clutch area. And what I notice is that this little plastic piece apparently is supposed to be clipped by that clutch handle. This will not come back, so there's no safety because the clutch is already on. So now I get to disassemble and see if I can get that hooked properly, or if I have to disassemble this whole thing further. Well, since I had to open this back up, I figured I would show the guts of this. Now what I can't see is where the oil feeder is. But there's your clutch, and the outer end's the brake. There's the brake itself, and like I said, we got a metal face here. You have this mechanism that under here is where that screw is that you use to move that back and forth. And as far as releasing this, that doesn't hook there. It actually has to get pushed back down in, but it was incredibly hard. And basically when you're trying to pull the brake back, this thing feels like it is going to break in the process. So I may run that back and forth a couple of times just to make sure it's a little better. The mechanism is designed essentially so that once the brake goes, it stays up and it doesn't come back down. So that's part of the reason why it's so stiff. But Never seen something that stiff. So I will put it back together and we'll see what happens now. Okay, so it actually cuts pretty decent once the brake is off. And when it's warm, it's a one pull start to get it to start up again right now. So from that standpoint, it's pretty nice. Now, what I don't know on this, I had looked before, is I don't know where the spark plug is at, so I'll have to figure that out at some point. But the one thing I wanted to point out, though, again, going back to the brake, you'll notice this slot that the whole brake lever is in, or the kickback lever, and it already would indicate that it's down. And if I push on it, you have to go to like there, and then this thing pops up. So I'm still not sure if this is just assembled wrong, and that thing should actually be underneath this. There's this curvature there that looks like that's what's in there, and if I pull back hard enough, well, there, I can get it to go down. And you'll notice that this goes all the way down to a point where it can't possibly be hooking on that. So I don't really like this kickback mechanism from a safety standpoint. I think it is misdesigned or possibly misassembled, but there's something not kosher with that. Otherwise, it's not too bad of a little saw. And giving that my expensive Tanaka saw that I had a Tanaka pole saw that only recently died and was just the most awesome machine, so I bought one of their chainsaws, and it turned out to be one of the biggest pieces of junk. Doesn't run, doesn't have any power. Could probably be tuned up, but it was pretty disappointing compared to the pole saw. And I already had sent it back once and still got garbage back from it. But overall, for this application, this one looks like it's going to do okay. So, a couple of flaws, but otherwise not too bad.